Hello. Of course, we have to speak to initiate the image. Well, to everybody tuning in, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good morning, wherever you are tuning in from the world. Great to see you. We're here for another of the Google Lovie Letter sessions, where we delve a bit deeper into some of the Lovie Award winning stories. And we have, from London, we've got Made by Many, who are going to be talking about Hackaball. So first of all, just a bit of context and background. Can you, first of all, maybe we should introduce yourself. So I'm Nicolas, and I am the jury chair from the Lovie Awards. And I'm calling in from Poke in London, and would like to introduce yourselves over there in Made by Many.
Sure. Hi there, everybody. I'm William Owen. I'm one of the founders of Made by Many. This is Seb.
Hi, I'm Seb Potter. I'm the product manager for Hackaball, and I'm also going to be running the Hackaball startup.
Okay.
I'm Melissa Coleman. I am a creative technologist on Hackaball. I've been on this project the longest of everyone, I think.
Hey, I'm Mike Walker. I'm a product designer at Made by Many.
Right. And just again, for a bit of context, can you in a nutshell give us the quick story of Made by Many and what is Made by Many first before we start looking at the product story?
Sure. Made by Many was founded 8 years ago as a hybrid agency / product innovation consultancy. We mix up design and engineering with business and product strategy with the aim of helping our clients unlock new market opportunities. Still hardware of one kind or another as well.
Great. I kind of lost you there. Hopefully not everybody lost you and you're back in frame and moving around, which is always encouraging. So let's move on, and probably, again, as part of the setup, it would be really nice to see one of these Hackaballs. You don't happen to have one around.
Funny you should ask that.
That was so cool.
So this is Hackaball. It is a programmable rubber ball that's designed for kids aged 6 to 12 to teach them the basics of computer programming. And as you can see, it's got some bright LEDs inside it, and at its core it's got some motion sensors, vibration motor, and a speaker. And if I bounce it around a bit, you can see that it reacts to different kinds of motion. So you can throw it, bounce it, roll it, and using a really simple app that we've designed, kids can program Hackaball to come up with their own games. Basically, there are lots of simple rules, like when the ball is bounced, Mike's got it there, when the ball is bounced, take an action, or when it's rolled, and you can change the lights, the vibration motor, and the sound at each step.
Yeah, so that's what's inside. Inside there is the LEDs, the IC, the computer, the motion sensor, the speaker, etc. And that's all protected.
Yeah, so just to understand it, and I guess we collectively understand it properly. So those allowing the kids to change those parameters starts to allow them to create different game designs and different sort of cause and effect relationships that allow them to sort of what's the? That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
So if I throw the ball hard, it turns red. If I pass it slowly, it turns blue. That kind of thing.
Okay. That's fantastic. Right. So where did the idea come from? And it's always the question you have to ask, but I'm going to ask it because we're all curious.
It came about, I think 2.5 years ago now, where we've been doing some work on connected products with a major sports brand, looking at their product design process, and we were very interested in the potential of connected products. What could happen when you united software with hardware and started to make objects more intelligent? And what we always do in that sort of situation is do something ourselves to learn first, particularly about the design process. Software and electronics and physical hardware have different design cycles. So if you're iterating through in prototypes, with software it's very, very quick. You can start with sketching and drawing, then you can move quickly into doing a little bit of coding and prototyping. With hardware, and in this case electronics, what would it be like? So we gave we set a project for 2 interns. One was a developer, one was an interaction designer, industrial designer, and gave them 3 months to come up with an idea around the idea of play. So any idea you can come up with was fine. And what they came up with was a thing called Rule Ball, which is very much, in terms of their original conception, what Hackaball is today. A ball which you can program simply and apply different rules to, and use those rules to make up games.
Yeah. And I mean, usually, oh, go on. Sorry.
I think the emphasis shifted over time as well, because I think in the beginning we were just thinking about how cool would it be to have a ball that lights up and can do all these amazing things. I think we realized as we were iterating it that actually the fact that kids were using a basic form of programming in order to do this was very, very interesting, because it just fitted perfectly with teaching kids to code, which is a major topic at the moment.
Yeah. So you know, you're like I guess a lot of people tuning in here. You have you know, a consultancy agency, but I guess most of your business is run on, you know, time and materials kind of, you know, business for clients, and then suddenly you have an idea that doesn't have a client attached. So you know, whilst we may often dream of doing products, you know, you're now some way down the line. You have a product in your hands. Presumably, that's you know, cost quite a lot to get there. How did you get there? How did you sort of circumvent those challenges? And where did your funding come from? And what's the story there?
Well, we certainly learned a lesson with side projects, or we thought we'd learned a lesson with side projects in the past, which was know when to kill them off. And we've done 2 or 3 before, learning about different aspects of mobile, learning about programming iPads and tablets. And with Hackaball, we stopped it. We gave it a finite 3-month timeline. However, then some new people came into the agency. They picked it up again. Ben, the industrial designer, carried on working with us, and he wanted to continue with the project. So after about 6 months, there was another spurt of development on it, which lasted probably about 6 months, I should think, where we got to a fairly sophisticated prototype, which we had made up in China, in the physical parts of it. Melissa developed the firmware. So we had the capability in-house to do some basic electronics design and firmware design. I think then that normally a project like this might have died. We did quite a bit of work looking at different ways of taking it to market. They all looked too expensive. Yeah. The thing that changed that for us, I think, was Kickstarter, and thinking about how to take a product to market through Kickstarter, or at the very least, use that as an experiment and as a market test. It then did very well in Kickstarter, and we're now actually producing it, and I think that surprised us all.
Although, yeah, I think you frozen us for us.
I think we're back. You're back anyway. Hopefully everybody is back. Yeah. We missed something there.
Okay.
Just, I think it was like the last sentence.
Right. So that's the answer, I think, to your question, Nick. In that it's always a difficult balance between thinking about client projects. Sometimes these things have to go on hold. You need to stop them. However, you can also get tax credits for genuine innovation, and that makes it more possible to do it and more reasonable. Yeah. But then also you get to a certain point, which I think where we are now, where we put people full-time on Hackaball in order to get it to market, and we have ring-fenced the team and made sure that there is proper investment in our business plan for the product.
Yeah, and I mean, once you run a successful campaign, presumably, you know, there is the funding to fuel it, but also there's an obligation there to deliver on your promise.
Yeah, there is definitely, and so the Kickstarter has funded the first production run of the ball. Yeah. The investment in the software has been made by many. Yeah. I think the other important aspect of this from an agency point of view is know what you're not good at. Yes. And so that's why we partnered with MAP, the industrial design agency, to develop a much more sophisticated, frankly, I think really beautiful, even though it's ours, it's actually MAP who did this, the casing, designed it, and did a fantastic job. And the reason they did so well is I think that their motivations were identical with ours, and that they wanted to learn about connected products too, so they were prepared to put a lot of investment in.
Yeah, and I mean, presumably from a kind of materials and engineering standpoint, a ball that's going to be kicked around by kids day in, day out has to be incredibly robust, right? Particularly if the utility is all electronic, which has its own set of demands, right? How was your experience there? Did you smash a few before you realised quite how far you need to go? Or, and how's it been out in market? Have you had a few returns? So,
I think partially, to start with, I'm really bad at hand-eye coordination, so I threw it over and over a few times. And then I get into kids who are also ruthless with it. They just, they don't see the difference between a prototype and a real product, so they just smash it, and you just think like, but it was interesting because actually our original design already survived remarkably well. Yeah. So it already made us quite confident that if you put real people with knowledge on this kind of subject on it, they would ace it, and they have, and we've made it super difficult for them because the whole idea of Hackaball was that it wasn't just a product that you can throw around. It's also one that you need to be able to take apart because you want to be able to get close to the internals of it, like the electronics. So not only does it need to stay together, it also needs to be able to come apart. Yeah. So it was a doubly
tough brief.
So to be clear, that you guys are sitting down with MAP and going through those kind of requirements and then figuring out the industrial implications and the material quality. Yeah, okay.
That's right. What they contributed was not just the form, but also the idea of how to make it robust in such a way that children could also get into it, because we wanted them to be able to see what was in the inside. So the idea of that membrane, that silicon membrane around the innards, which gives it a shock absorbency, and then also rigidity, so that it fits inside the hemisphere like that, and when you put the two together like this inside this cage, inside this jacket, then they can't come apart very easily. They're quite waterproof and very, very shock absorbent. And it's not going to kill a child because it's nice and bouncy too.
What's your do you have a sort of testing regime with monkeys or anything interesting like that? What's your claims?
We actually use kids aged sort of around about 6-8 years old. We've been really lucky to work with a couple of local schools who have been really good in helping us providing sort of code club time and teachers. So recently we were filming with kids. We had them kicking hackaballs around the playground for several hours during the day. So they get stress tested quite a lot just in just by giving to our target audience.
And just on the subject of kids, obviously this is aimed at children, and I mean I guess most of the time our worlds are occupied with adults because they've got more money, so we're more interested in them. But and when you're dealing with kids, particularly around a product like this, and particularly because of the sort of coding dimension and the educational dimension to it, the whole series of considerations there. What were the challenges there, and are there any particular stories that where you think have resolved certain design problems in an interesting way, or anything?
I think there was when we started to look at taking Hackaball to market, we obviously started to think about the app in a very different way to the MVP that we'd already built. And I think the first thing we noticed when we went to a couple of games fairs, we actually noticed how engaging a product has to be to hold a child's attention. So to get them to learn, we went to Hamleys and we looked at sort of VTech toys and stuff. They're all really dull and dry and boring. But then you go to the game center and it's an amazing neon experience that has totally got kids hooked. So we wanted to draw as much of that into the kind of app design as well as the design of the ball, just to engage the kids enough to deliver those quite fun lessons that we created. I think it was getting those two to marry together.
I think also as digital agencies, we talk a lot about an MVP and an iterative process, especially with digital products. And one thing that's really clear from working with kids and building real physical products is that the quality bar for an MVP has to be much, much higher. So you can't just release a product that sort of just works and then iterate. And and fix it as you go along to get you really get one chance to impress parents who are buying something for their kids. And that's something that we've worked on really hard with Hackaball through the Kickstarter process, and the process after that is making sure that the ball is absolutely at that level of quality that the parents are going to expect.
I do think we made it especially hard for ourselves by choosing to do a ball, because I think that's, like, in terms of form factor of things that people can play with, it's very difficult. Like a ball, as soon as you have prototypey materials, you could make a pretty cover, and then it could still already be quite a lot in terms of the experience. But when it's a ball, you can never do that, because it needs to stay together.
The ball is also the embodiment of fun, and and Hackaball is all about fun, and it's definitely not an educational product. We don't want it to be an educational product, and that's what we learned from, I think, when you went to Hamleys and the Science Museum, that there's this category of things that are aimed at parents that are grey and very serious looking. That sound as if children ought to really like them and will definitely teach them a lot, but children run a mile whenever they think they're being educated. And we wanted to make Hackaball something that was for them, but was incidentally gave them the ability to be creative and work with their friends, be collaborative, but also do it outside. So it's the antidote to iPhones and iPads, although it uses them.
Okay. And I mean, just more generally then, I mean, you guys spend a lot of time thinking about more kind of, digital systems and digital experiences distributed through digital platforms and channels. Are there any specific, the design process and the way you approach those kinds of challenges are the same as, when you start dealing with hardware? Have you found it lots of challenges along the way? Do you think, what's sort of the same and what's different in approaching a product like this?
Well, I mean, when we were prototyping both the ball and the app, we had to make different prototypes of different modalities, and I think through the life of Hackaball, the ball has looked like this, but it's also looked like an Arduino board stuck to a beanbag, and obviously apps, they start out as sketches, and then we do sort of wireframey type stuff and little clicky prototypes. I think it is very similar, but when you start to look at the physical world, it's all a bit more like role playing and sort of imagine scenarios, and I think because we don't do it all the time, we're having to learn new ways of doing things. So I think we've advanced our kind of prototyping knowledge quite far by doing this project. I think we'd have a lot of tools for next time we do connected projects.
I think the other thing that's different, or the one thing that's most different, is the level of complexity increases exponentially with the more different form factors you have, and the app is a fairly simple app. The ball is a fairly simple product, but the two of them working together is something that's extremely complicated. The other aspect is that, as well as the physical product, you have the different aspects of the hardware, the sound, the lighting, the vibration, how that works within a game, and the question of then developing the firmware for the different electronics. And I think Seb would definitely say that, and Melissa, that's been the hardest thing of all. The thing that we as an agency are least good at is firmware and electronics. And unfortunately, that applies practically the world over, except certain parts of China. And firmware is incredibly expensive, and is definitely the hardest aspect, I think. I don't know if you'd agree, of developing a product of this kind.
Is that just because we're so used to sort of high-level, coding environments, we're used to being able to cover a lot of ground very quickly, and for things to be stable versus going into a chip and having to do a lot more to achieve relatively simple things? Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. And one of the things there is that writing firmware for prototypes of Arduinos, for example, is actually probably not anywhere near as complicated as having to write the kind of firmware that's needed for a final production product. There's, for prototypes, we've got a lot of tools that make that kind of thing now much more friendly to the developer. But that was probably the biggest lesson that we learned in manufacturing, is that what a different discipline manufacturing is. It's really about balancing cost and form factor and availability. And once you've made all of those compromises, getting to the point of writing the actual software that goes on the chip.
And did you get a good response from the manufacturers? Because I mean, that in itself is a kind of a new world, isn't it, with its own unique set of rules. Did you solve that relatively quickly, or was that a bumpy journey in its own right? Or
I think we did had a good experience initially when we were prototyping, didn't we?
I think we've been quite lucky in the sense that because MAP is already used to doing products, they have quite a few good connections.
Yeah.
So as a digital agency, we didn't come into it completely blank.
Yeah.
We could take advantage of all that whole world that they already have access to. I think it depends on how much you want to do in house and how much you want to do in collaboration with, for example, people in China.
Yeah.
I think that's a balance that.
One of the reasons that Kickstarter was so valuable was that it enabled us to get enough money together to get most of the manufacturing done ourselves, rather than rely on a company who will take an investment or charge quite a lot of money to organise that themselves. So Hackaball was made in 5 different factories, or 4?
No, a bit more, maybe 6 different factories.
Yeah, so 6 different factories, but actually all being organised, coordinated by one individual who's been fantastic for us.
So the advantage of that is that it takes a lot of complexity out of manufacturing. I think the disadvantage is that it's not, it's not paying in a sense. It's paying for doing this run, but it doesn't sort of, it doesn't make profit immediately. So I think it's amazing for a first production run.
Yeah.
But then you have to figure out how to make it a company that makes money.
Yes. That's the next bit, presumably.
Yeah.
And I mean, working with the sort of spinning it the other way around. Did you get a sense from Matt of where? I mean, presumably you're used to a certain approach, and bring with you from your experience a kind of perception, a way of working, way of thinking. Did you feel like, having sort of grown up from a sort of digital design background, whether you had certain advantages in being able to kind of think through some of those problems, or did it just feel like, by the time it became a physical design project, it was a classic physical design project and you didn't have anything necessarily to bring to bear? What was your sense on that?
I think we were really closely collaborating with MAP, both MAP and a guy called Carl Sadler, who we had doing sounds for us. I think quite early on we had come up with the brand we kind of desired Hackaball to have, a kind of personality, and we'd quite often meet up and have more like jamming sessions than sort of standard meetings where we decide this or that, or here's your brief. It was, we were coming together and shaping that character and that brand into something that would sit across both physical and digital. So I think they were always done hand in hand.
I think there's a space where neither have experience, which is in the interactions. And I think as a digital agency, you have the advantage of already thinking from an interactions point of view. So, what does the ball do? What does the app do? And how do they interact at the same time? And how do you make sure that that's not, because you have divided attention either on the app or on the ball, how do you make sure that doesn't become a divided experience, but something that it just works across the board?
One of the reactions we got on Kickstarter was from some quite experienced product people, and since have had from VC companies, is that for a Kickstarter product, Hackaball is very mature and appears to have been really well thought through, and that's because as an agency, both Many and MAP have, I mean, in our case, probably somewhere in the region of 15 years experience in knowing how not to do things and then learning. So which most startups probably would not have, or would find very expensive to buy in that kind of expertise. There are certainly areas in which we have learnt a lot about how not to do things in Hackaball's case, but particularly in the areas Melissa's been talking about. And that's hugely valuable to us, not just as this product, but in our future work with clients.
Yeah, I read a piece by, which I recommend to listeners, from Tim Morgan at Mint Digital, who now describe, I mean, they were formerly a kind of agency, a creative agency, and now they describe themselves as sort of a startup studio. And he argues, and I'm sure if you look at examples like us two as well, who are similarly sort of divided between their own products, obviously with Monica Valley being probably the most known. against again a UX experience consultancy background. They're all success stories. Tim's argument is that from his point of view within Mint, I mean obviously they haven't got these enormous kind of stellar success, but a whole series of successful exits and product deliveries and whatnot. He argues that their success rate is actually really high compared to the classic kind of two startup guys and a VC or a bit of seed and then leading through to VC. Do you think that from everything you're talking about, and certainly for the last sort of rounds of conversation about how your processes and how your skills and experiences all kind of coalesce into this the refinement of this product that, to your point, is more mature as a consequence? I mean, do you think therefore that actually maybe this sort of struggle with a lot of agencies have had trying to sort of to create these new products, why we should actually be much more positive about it, much more bold and courageous, and really try and see those things through because of those advantages? Would you say that's true, or do you think you're kind of uniquely constructed to attack those kinds of opportunities?
I think it would be hubristic to say that Hackaball has been a commercial success because it's not been launched yet. And while there was a lot of evidence from Kickstarter, it's a very good point of validation that parents really like it and want to buy it, and kids, we know from our testing, really want to play it. It's still got to go out there in the market, and also we need to work out how to retail it and get the price point right and all of that. That said, however, the fact that agencies do have where they have quite a broad skill set, they're more likely to succeed, I think. Yeah. We won't always hear about the failures, though, whereas we hear about the VC failures because money's been put into them and then that money's gone. Agencies can put their money in without telling anybody, and we put our hours and our energy and our time in, and that's informal, so you don't get to hear about the failures quite so much. We've done in our side products, we had one called Pickle, which got to a certain point, and it failed. But we didn't really put any money into it, just a lot of effort. And it actually succeeded hugely in teaching us a huge amount about how to use native iPhone apps and how to use different aspects of the iPhone within the code in terms of different physical aspects of it. So I think it may well be that agencies or agency-type knowledge can overcome many of the shortcomings of startups, which are often started by one entrepreneur who doesn't know what they don't know. Yeah. That's
a fair point. So, I mean, just to wrap up, then, I mean, you I think to get to this stage, I would definitely class it as a success. It's been recognised by industry-leading juries at the Lovie Awards, no less. So that's definitely a success, and with all the validation and everything you talk about as well. And now, obviously looking forward, you're now sitting with a product that is makeable and hackable. What next, and how do you? I mean, both on the sort of product, because products aren't static. Obviously, you've got all the learnings of what happens when it is actually released into market, and of course you've got the whole storytelling and how do you get it out in front of people. So what are the big themes of the imminent kind of public launch?
So,
well, our first challenge is actually to get this initial set out to backers, and we're really hoping to do that for the end of March. Manufacturing is in place now for that. Looking a little bit further into the future, we're trying to secure funding at the moment so that we can do a further manufacturing round and start looking towards a retail entry in the latter half of 2016. It would be fantastic to be able to get Hackaball on the market for Christmas this year and get it to retailers. But also the ball itself is just the first iteration, it's the first form of the product. The smart core that we looked at earlier, we think we can see that in lots of different products. So you might be able to put it in, say, a magic wand or a lightsaber or a frisbee, various kind of things like that. So once we've got the product onto market, it's about we don't want to rest on our laurels. We don't want to sit still. We want to make sure that we're looking at what the second, third format of the product would be, getting accessories developed onto the market, and constantly building on the app and releasing new features there to support our backers and our customers.
And community building, because what's so great about Hackaball as well is that you can take the core out and you can put it into anything, because once you would sort of be finished with you know, the app and the ball and all the different things you could do with it. You can just take it out, you can program it, and then you can put it in your own creative projects. I think it would be really, really fun to highlight what people have made. So it's kind of about sort of Hackaball being something that everybody makes, not just us making it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Hackaball's got to a point where it needs to fly by itself, either literally or metaphorically. I don't mind which. But we need investment for a second round to go into a proper manufacturing run and start getting this in front of retailers, and that's serious money of the kind that an agency doesn't have. So we have to go and look for a round of investment. We recognise as a company that Made by Men is not going to be doing that. And going back to your point about agencies developing products, Nick, we have seen agencies be consumed and fall as a result of their products. This point is one example, and we don't need to go that way. We want to get this thing working as its own business, which is what it deserves to be.
Well, hopefully we've got some investors and enthusiasts out there listening today, so maybe you'll get a call afterwards. So we've reached the end of our Hangout, and which leads me to thank you all for joining us, both the viewers. Are they viewers or users? I don't know. Something. Or the audience, whoever you are. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Made by Many, for sharing your lovely lesson.
Thank you, Nick.
I should say.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
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 Turn it off.